Welcome to my channel, where the scariest stories come to life. Before we dive into today's chilling tale, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, so you never miss a story. Now, let's get into the horror. This happened last year. It was a really nice spring day, and I went for a walk in the park after work, which was a routine I did almost daily. I would sit at a desk all day, so it felt great to get up and move around afterward. I have an apartment on the edge of the city, and the park is just a couple of blocks away. On this particular day, with it being so nice out, I walked a little farther than usual and wandered onto a couple of city streets. Finally, I circled back around through the park and returned to my place. There were quite a few other people out walking as well. I was probably out for about an hour or so in total, when I was maybe 5 blocks from my apartment. Suddenly, someone tapped me on the shoulder from behind. I looked back, and there was a man standing there, tall and thin, who appeared to be around my age. He said to me that he wasn't sure if I was aware, but someone had been following me. He mentioned that the guy had just walked away but had seemingly been following me for almost 20 minutes. I was completely unaware of this. I asked the man who the person was that had been following me, and he said the guy was short, with dark brown hair, and wearing a white shirt. I told him I didn't notice anyone, then asked where the guy had gone. I was told he went in the opposite direction. I thanked him and continued walking home. I hadn't been paying much attention, I guessed. As I walked the rest of the way home, I wondered who had been following me and why. I also paid much closer attention and looked around, but I didn't see anyone fitting the description. When I got back to my apartment, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Several times throughout the night, I wondered who had been following me. I decided I would take a break from walking after that. But the very next night, something else happened. My apartment was on the ground level, and I had a little patio outside. There wasn't much space, but it was nice to have. It was probably around 10 p.m., and I was moving into my living room, which opens out to the patio. As I did, I saw the figure of what appeared to be a man moving away from the window. It looked like he had been right next to it. However, with it being dark and me just catching him walking away, I couldn't make out much. I hadn't gotten a look at his face or anything. It made me remember the man who had allegedly followed me home, and I became worried that someone was stalking me. I went over to the window and looked out, but by the time I got there, the man was gone. I just hoped he wouldn't come back. For that night, he didn't. 2 nights later, though, I was home alone again, this time already in my living room. It was a little later, about 11 p.m., and I was on the couch using my laptop. That's when I looked up and, out of the corner of my eye, saw what looked like a person outside for a second. Since I was already in the room and much closer to the window, this really surprised me. I sat up and turned on the back patio light. When the light came on, the man who had been walking toward the window was exposed. I got a clear look at him. He was tall and thin, and I recognized him. It was the same guy who had told me I had been followed. When he saw me, he quickly turned around and ran away. I stayed up really late that night, unable to sleep. I didn't want the man to come back. Thankfully, he didn't. This story happened just last week as I was driving home from work. I work in a really busy city, and my drive to and from work can be quite frustrating. Sometimes, I get stuck in traffic for much longer than I would like. The drive to work usually takes about 10 to 15 minutes, but it often ends up being 30 to 40 minutes because of traffic. Last week, I was on my way home, and it was a warmer day. The traffic was especially bad because lanes were being closed, and there was just 1 lane instead of 4. Everyone had to merge together, and we were moving at a snail's pace. After I had gotten into the 1 lane and was crawling along for maybe 5 minutes behind other cars, we suddenly came to a stop. We remained stopped for a good 5 minutes. It wasn't unusual to stop, but this one lasted longer than usual. I figured maybe there was a crash or something up ahead. Then I saw a guy walking up behind my car in the mirror. He was walking along the side of the road. I had my window open because it was warm, and then I saw the guy make eye contact with me through my mirror. He was wearing green pants and a gray shirt, and he had long hair. I also noticed that he was barefoot. He walked right up to my window. I was a little confused by the situation. The guy asked if he could get a quick ride and said I could drop him off about a mile up the road. He then pointed out that he didn't even have any shoes. I shook my head and told him sorry, but no. He came across as suspicious to me, and I really didn't want to let him inside my car. I thought he might go up to the other cars nearby and ask them for a ride since we were all stopped on the road, but he didn't. He just turned around and walked back along the side of the road, the same way he came. I kept watching in my side mirror to see where he was going. I even leaned my head out of the window a little to get a better look. Then I saw him get inside the back seat of a car about 3 cars behind me. It didn't look like he had spoken to the driver or anything, he just walked straight up and got inside. We sat stationary for about 2 more minutes, and then finally, things started to move again. Eventually, about a mile later, the lanes expanded, and we started moving at a normal speed again. As I was driving, a car pulled up beside me. I glanced over and saw 2 guys flipping me off. The guy in the back seat was the same one who had asked for a ride. Their car honked, and both guys yelled some things at me before speeding past. I was just glad they were gone. I'm not sure what that guy was all about, but I'm sure glad I didn't let him inside my car. This happened back when I was a kid. I think I was about 9 years old at the time, and this was many years ago. Back then, I lived with my parents and brother in a pretty average house. Our neighborhood was also typical. We had many neighbors that were close by. One afternoon, I was outside in the front yard. I would go outside quite a bit when I was a kid, and I enjoyed playing basketball in the driveway or putting golf balls around in the front yard. I don't remember exactly what I was doing, but I was out in the front yard when I saw a man walking down the street. I did not recognize him as one of the neighbors, and I remember noticing how slowly he was walking. When he saw me, he started walking closer, and I got the feeling like he wanted to talk to me or something. As a kid, I was taught by my parents not to talk to strangers, so I didn't plan on talking to the guy. But at this point, he was maybe 30 feet away, and I was in the front yard, right by the street. I felt like I couldn't just run away. The man waved at me and walked a few steps closer. He then just stood there looking at me, and I was just standing there staring at him. After a few seconds, he asked me if I lived there and pointed to my house. I said yes. Then he asked who else lived there. I pretty much told him everything, that my parents, brother, and I lived there. The man just nodded and then kept walking down the street. Once he left, I didn't think much of it, except that I was happy he was gone. I had been nervous talking to him and probably shouldn't have in the first place, but I kept on playing outside in the yard and didn't see the man for the rest of the day. I think it was the very next day when I saw him again, though this time I was playing basketball in the driveway. There was a basketball hoop outside near the garage, and I would spend lots of time there. As I was playing basketball by myself, I noticed a guy walking down the street. When I looked closer, I could tell it was the same man. He was once again walking very slowly and seemed to be headed for our house. I didn't think he had seen me yet, or at least he wasn't very close to me or our house. So I ran into the garage, hoping the guy would walk past our house and not stop. Once I got inside the garage, I stood behind a random box and looked out at the road. The guy then walked towards our house. I got a bad feeling and ducked down behind the box. I expected the guy to pass by our house, and I was going to look out again to make sure he was gone a few seconds later, but that's when I heard footsteps coming up the driveway. I started to feel really nervous. Why was this guy coming up the driveway? I moved as quietly as I could, further behind a few boxes that were sitting inside the garage. The footsteps kept getting closer. Soon I heard the man enter the garage. My heart was really racing now. He stood there in the garage for a moment, and I was crouched behind the boxes, trying not to make a sound. About 30 seconds went by, and I didn't know if I could take it any longer. Then I heard the man walk deeper into the garage, and his footsteps moved around the entire area. Thankfully, he never got too close to me. Eventually, he walked back out, exiting the garage and heading back down the driveway, then down into the street again. Finally, I emerged from behind the boxes and looked out. I was just in time to see the man walking down the street. After that, I ran inside. I didn't go outside for a few weeks after that. I never saw him again, thankfully. But to this day, I don't know what he wanted or why he went all the way into our garage. Thanks for sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give the video a like and leave a comment with your thoughts. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a terrifying tale. See you in the next one.